begin with lymphatic system. So it's important to do this in the order that we're doing this. So the first area is collarbone. So top and bottom of the collarbone. And we can do tapping, patting, massaging. And basically we want to be in these areas, these 6 areas in this specific order for at least 20 seconds, say. And we can use our fingertips and tap like this. And we can do a little circular massage. So we're doing the collarbone first because it's the major low pressure area that all the other high pressure areas are trying to drain into. And that includes the feet and the legs are draining up into this area through the abdominal area. And so just like outside weather, inside weather can also be stalled. And the reason why we're doing this practice is to make sure the pressurization of the system is open so that the lymphatic drainage can happen properly into the areas that it's supposed to be flowing into. So sides of the neck next. And so it's just in back of the ear along the jawline here. And while we're doing this, we want to be mindful of what we're doing. And so here we're draining any toxins out of both hemispheres of the brain into that collarbone area. And so that's what we can be feeling, imagining, intending that this downward movement is encouraging any toxins in the brain to flow downward into that collarbone area so that they can get out of the body. And we can also do this, which is our fingers like this. So 2 fingers are behind the ear, 2 fingers are in front of the ear. We can go quickly up and down a few times. And then we can also pull down, again, encouraging the downward movement. And so we should do this practice every day. Good to do it, say, when you get up in the morning, first thing, because this is going to set your lymphatic system right away during the day. And then any movements we make are going to help to pump the lymphatic fluid. So next we can go to the back of the neck. So for the back of the neck, we're just massaging this area here. And we can notice the tightness that might be in this area. And this little massage that we're doing should help to relax the tissues, release some of the tension, and therefore we're going to get better flow downward into that collarbone area. And then we can squeeze and release the brain stem in the center here. And then we can go to the pecs. So the pectoral muscles are here. If you poke around with your index finger, and you haven't done this before, you're going to find an area that is very tender. And so you can put all your fingers together and just kind of massage that area. This tender sore point area will go away after you do this practice every day for a while. And that's a good sign. So if there's any tenderness anywhere, that means that there's stuck blockages in that area. And doing this practice, doing these movements is going to help to release that. We can also pat and tap these areas. And especially if you're tapping with your fingertips, you're going to notice any tenderness areas. And for the lymphatic system, there's certain sort of swelling, bloating that can be happening in areas. So your face might be a little bloated, your neck might be a little bloated. That's going to show that those areas that we just did are a little clogged. And we want to do the armpit. So armpit area. And so in the armpit, it should be caved in. If it's puffy here in the armpit, that means that lymphatic drainage is not really working in this area that we're working on right now. And we can do some massage stuff. And the next area we go to is the abdominal area. So we want to cover this whole territory here. And if your lymphatic system is blocked here, there'll be a lot of bloating in the belly. So that's how you'll notice that. This is our secondary important area where everything from toes, feet, legs are trying to pour up into this abdominal area. And so it has to get up into this area before it moves up into the collarbone area. And this movement here of drawing into the center is helpful because what happens in this abdominal area is there's a specific node in the center here that everything's trying to pour into that center, and then it moves up the spine to the collarbone area. So doing this sweeping inward to the center is an important movement. And then we can do a movement for the stomach meridian that also is working with this center line. So we have two more areas. So we have the inguinal crease here, which is where our legs attach to the bottom of the torso. And we just use a knife edge here. And we just do a side to side movement like this, getting again some activity in that area. And then our sixth and last area for the lymphatic is back of knees. So again, tapping, patting, massaging, being pretty gentle in the back of the knees here. So this is one practice, again, that should be done when we get up in the morning, every day. In the lower part of the body, we'll notice swelling in the ankles and this lower leg area, which will tell us that things are stuck down here and not moving upward. So do that one. That one takes a few minutes to do. If you can, follow it up immediately with the yin-yang padding. If you can't, do the yin-yang padding a little bit later. But the yin-yang padding will continue to work with the lymphatic system, but also work with the other flows that are both energetic and fluidic. And we spend a little more time in the joints because a lot of things get stuck in the joints, and the joints are energy gates, and we don't want things stuck in these areas. So we move down the inside of the arm first. Again, we're going to spend a little more time on the inside of the elbow. And we're doing this movement by cupping our hand a little bit. It's not totally flat like that. We're cupping it and just letting the body relax and kind of tap these areas. So wrist, palm, and fingers. And that's the inside of our arm. So now we go to the yang side and do fingers and palm, wrist, slowly moving up the forearm, outside of elbow, upper arm, to shoulder again. So front, top, back, outside of shoulder. And then we go to the collarbone and go to the other side, do the same thing. So shoulder, down the inside of the arm first, inside of the elbow, forearm. So we're slowly moving in a linear direction with this. Wrist, palm, and fingers. And then we go up, fingers, palm. So just don't randomly bounce around with this tapping. We're going in a line. Forearm, outside of elbow. Back to the shoulder again. If any of these joints are bothering you, spend more time patting that joint area. We go down the rib cage and around the belt. And then we go down the outside of the legs. So primarily this is clearing any blockages in the meridian system, but we're also continuing to work on the lymphatic system by adding this in. So knees, maybe spending more time there. Down to ankles, feet, up the front. We're on the belt again. and then down the back of the legs, back of the knees. So you'll notice we're working on a lot of these areas that we worked on with the lymphatic six point area and up the inside of knees. And then we end that with a little spiraling in both directions. So that's the second practice that if you can do that after the lymphatic, it's going to be really good. If you can't do it a little bit later in the day, do it maybe a half an hour later. And then here's another thing we can do, shaking the tree, which is just this bouncing up and down like this. This is also very beneficial for the lymphatic system and all the cellular structure. Shakes out all the tension. So we're just shaking all the tension out of the body. And you want to try to do this for 20, 30 seconds minimum. A minute is good. Even longer is good. If you could, so, you can pause. When you pause, you might notice your palms tingling. You might notice relaxation in the body. And again, you could do this shaking the tree just standalone anytime. And so say when you're sitting down, so these are all things you can just do, little 5-minute routines, little 3-minute routines. You can put them together, or you can do them separately. So we did the lymphatic, we did the yin yang padding, we did the shaking the tree. So again, you can put those all together or do them individually. And another good thing, so if you're sitting down a lot, butterfly shake is good to do. So if you're sitting down watching TV or anything, doing the shake in and out is going to be very beneficial. This is something that it's like a qigong practice that's given to people that are recovering from strokes. And it helps to move, again, all the systems, the energy and the fluids in the lower part of the body. And it helps to drain downward anything that needs to drain downward. That again is six-tail energy. So you would just do this for as long and as much as possible. And again, we have to be really relaxed when we're doing any of these movements, because the relaxation is letting all the six-tail energy pour outward. If we tense, it's holding it in. And so just do it as much as you can. Maybe you stop and then you remind yourself a couple hours later, oh, let me do that again because I'm sitting down. And you do it for a few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You can do all these for longer periods of time. They're good, again, as long as you're not tensing up. Another thing is you're sitting forward on the chair a little bit so that the bottom of the legs aren't resisting on the seat of the chair. And that's also good for doing some movements like this. So doing a hip spiraling, circling movement like this is really good. And you can do this one standing up also. And you go several times, say maybe 6 to 9 times one direction, and then you do the same number of repetitions the other direction. And you're doing it nice and slow, but this is really good for the kidneys. It's good for lower back. And again, you're moving fluids and energy around. And arm movements are good to do to clear out this area here, especially if you notice any kind of puffiness or tenderness in these areas. So we can do a movement like this where we're um, uh, moving down the center line with our fingers back to back, curling and coming up, and then curling and going back down again. So this movement is closer to the body. Here we go further away from the torso and dive upward. And then we come back in toward the body and dive downward again. So we do this maybe 6 or 9 times in that direction, and then we change direction. So now we're close to the body moving upward, little fingers, and then index fingers dive down further away. So this is really helping the shoulder girdle area and the elbows. And again, it's going to really help that puffiness. So all of these can be just done individually. You can just do this one and nothing else. So doing this one might take you a minute to do this one. Or depending on how many reps you do, it might take 2 minutes. So you can do that. Another movement you can do is moving the arm like this. And you can do this standing up also. Standing up is probably a better way to do it. So we go in one direction, maybe 6 or 9 times, and then you go back to front. Now, if there's any tenderness or pain, when you're trying to get a full range of motion, stop before you get to that pain, but still continue to do the movement. Because eventually then you're going to be able to move a little bit more and eventually move all the way up. And if you have a shoulder that's bothering you, do that movement on the good shoulder first, and then go to the bad shoulder and do the movement again on that side. And it's very slow. And this really helps the rotator cuff area. And then another movement to do that's the most aggressive is this one here, where you're winding, stretching, pulling out, and an extra pull out at the end here, winding, stretching, pulling out the whole time here, extra movement here, winding, stretching, pulling out, extra movement, stretching outward. And that's another movement you can do. So you can do all these movements individually. You can do them together in a sequence, which is good. But again, just doing the movements is really what the important part is. And walking would be really good. So just walking, around. So even if you just walk around the inside of the house in the winter, or you go to the Y and they have a track there in Guilderland and you walk around that. Or maybe you have another place you can go that's nearby that again you can do a walk. Right now it's summer, so walking around outside is really good to do and easy. So again, we've done this for about 20 minutes, but you can make these in like 3-minute sections if you want to. And that's what we have for today.